Weeds are the #1 enemy of every gardener. Last year, Americans spent over $36 billion just managing and maintaining their lawns. And right after that, they walked into a store and bought fertilizer to replenish the nutrients back into the soil, an endless war against grass that grows back every single week. In this video, I'm going to show you how to break that cycle with 4 methods that turn grass clippings into the most powerful fertilizer your garden has ever had. Zero cost, zero chemicals. If this video adds value to your life, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. But first, let's be honest about something. We remove grass almost on autopilot. This cycle of grow, cut, toss has been passed down for generations. We pull it, bag it, throw it away, operating under the assumption that grass is something that simply shouldn't exist in the garden. But if you stop for just a moment, the real question worth asking is, why does grass have to be eliminated at all? To answer that, we need to go back to something that happened in Germany in 1913, something that on the surface had nothing to do with gardening, but quietly reshaped how the entire world thinks about soil from that point forward. During World War I, Germany was facing a survival-level crisis, not on the battlefield, but in its weapons supply chain. They were running out of saltpeter, the essential raw material for producing gunpowder and explosives, and the world's largest reserves were controlled by their enemies, primarily in Chile and India. 2 chemists, Fritz Haber and Haber-Bosch, solved the problem by developing a method to synthesize ammonia, combining nitrogen from the air with hydrogen under extreme pressure and temperature. In 1913, the first industrial-scale Haber-Bosch plant went online. Without that invention, World War I may have ended far sooner, simply because Germany would have run out of ammunition. The war ended, but the factories didn't disappear. Engineers still needed work, and a massive stockpile of synthetic nitrogen still needed a market. After World War II, those same factories, originally built to serve warfare, were redirected toward agricultural fertilizer production. The technology that once made explosives started showing up in gardens, packaged in brightly colored bags, promising record harvests, and the promise delivered. From the 1930s to today, corn yields in the United States climbed from under 1,500 kilograms per hectare to over 10,000. Synthetic fertilizer became one of the most important inventions in the history of feeding the modern world. But somewhere in that transformation, something quietly disappeared, so quietly that most of us never even knew it existed. Before industrial fertilizer, people fed their soil in a completely different way. In ancient China, farmers had been using green grass as fertilizer since the 11th century BC. By the 7th century BC, the practice was widespread, documented in the Shijing, the oldest collection of Chinese poetry, with a line that was entirely practical in meaning. When weeds are composted and allowed to break down, the barley grows thick. In the West, ancient Greeks around 300 BC were already plowing legumes directly into the soil as green manure. The Romans did the same. The philosopher Xenophon wrote plainly in his Economicus that what is green returns to the earth exactly what the earth gave out. And according to the latest archaeological evidence, humans were already enriching soil with organic matter as far back as 8,000 years ago. 8,000 years of knowledge, passed naturally from generation to generation. No textbooks needed, because it was as obvious as eating. Then, in less than a century, from 1913 through the 1960s, that entire system was almost completely replaced. A new model emerged, simpler and far more profitable for a great many companies. Buy fertilizer from a factory, pour it into the ground, throw the grass away. By 2024, the global fertilizer market had reached a value of $144 billion, but the cost that came with it was anything but small. Nearly 50% of the nitrogen in synthetic fertilizer never gets absorbed by plants. Instead, it runs off into rivers and streams or escapes into the atmosphere as chemical compounds. That excess nitrogen contaminates drinking water, triggers algal blooms capable of killing entire aquatic ecosystems, and releases nitrous oxide, a greenhouse gas many times more potent than CO2. Meanwhile, a remarkably simple solution sits ignored. In the United States alone, if people simply allowed grass clippings to decompose naturally instead of bagging and hauling them away, the soil could store an additional 16.7 million tons of carbon every single year. This is the story of a cycle, one engineered very cleverly over the course of history. And more importantly, it's the story of how you can step out of that cycle, starting right in your own backyard. Soil is not an inert container, it's a living community. In just 1 teaspoon of healthy soil, the number of microorganisms can exceed the total human population of Earth. They eat, digest, excrete, and become food for other organisms. And through that continuous loop, nutrients locked inside the molecular structure of plant material get broken down into forms that plant roots can absorb immediately. In that system, grass clippings are not waste, they are food. The reason is simpler than most people expect. Fresh grass has a very low carbon to nitrogen ratio, meaning it contains a relatively high amount of nitrogen compared to carbon. That's what makes it decompose so rapidly and release nutrients almost immediately. Compared to dry leaves or wood chips, materials that can take months to show results, fresh grass clippings function like a high-speed nutrient shot. In a composting experiment that ran for 28 days, between 20 and 30% of the carbon and nitrogen in grass clippings was mineralized into forms that plants could absorb directly. In other words, in less than a month, nearly a third of all the nutrients in the clippings you just cut are ready to go straight into the root zone, completely free of charge. A study published in 2025 added another layer. When soil was amended with fresh grass clippings as organic matter, the diversity of beneficial bacteria increased significantly. At the same time, the microbial community shifted from a dormant state to an active one, meaning the soil didn't just contain life, it became actively engaged in producing and retaining nutrients in ways that synthetic fertilizer simply cannot replicate. One more detail worth knowing. Fresh grass is roughly 80 to 85% water. That's why clippings shrink and disappear so quickly. When managed properly, they'll break down before you even realize they were there. So the question was never whether to throw grass away. The only real question is how to use it. Here are 4 ways, from fastest to most sustainable, that you can put to work in your garden immediately. Stay until the end, because the last method requires almost no effort at all. The fastest method, the one you'll see results from in just a few days, is grass tea. You need a large plastic bucket. Pack fresh clippings into about 2/3 full, then fill it the rest of the way with water. If possible, use rainwater, because tap water often contains chlorine or fluoride, chemicals added to make it safe for drinking, but capable of suppressing the very microorganisms you need for fermentation. If tap water is all you have, leaving the bucket outside for about a day will allow most of the chlorine to off-gas naturally. Then set the bucket somewhere with good airflow. This matters more than you might think. Within a few days, the fermentation process will start producing a fairly strong smell. Stir it lightly every 2 to 3 days, just enough to introduce oxygen and keep fermentation moving in an aerobic direction, which is cleaner and more effective than anaerobic breakdown. Around day 10, you'll notice the water has turned a deep brown and the surface has stopped bubbling. That's your signal it's ready. Before using it, dilute at a ratio of 1 part grass liquid to 10 parts clean water until the color resembles weak tea. Apply it directly to the base of your plants, keeping it off the leaves. Results tend to show up within 4 to 7 days, deeper green color, faster new leaf growth, and especially noticeable recovery if a plant was already showing signs of nitrogen deficiency. If you want something lower maintenance that still handles multiple problems at once, mulching solves 3 things simultaneously. Grass laid around the base of your plants breaks down right there in the soil, releasing nitrogen directly into the root zone where it's needed most. The layer on top blocks sunlight from reaching weed seeds sitting dormant in the soil beneath, and it significantly slows down moisture evaporation on hot days. Fresh clippings work best around leafy greens, peppers, and tomatoes, plants with a continuous demand for nitrogen. Dry grass or straw works better around potatoes and root vegetables because the looser structure gives bulbs room to expand without fighting compacted soil. The one thing that matters most here, always cut before the grass has had a chance to form seed heads. Young green clippings carry the highest nitrogen content and zero risk of accidentally seeding a new crop of weeds into your most carefully tended beds. If you're willing to wait a little longer, composting produces the most complete result of all four methods. What you're creating isn't just nutrients, it's humus, an organic structure that improves water retention, loosens soil texture, and creates a stable habitat for a diverse microbial community that feeds your plants consistently over months. But a compost pile only works when it's balanced. Grass clippings are nitrogen-rich and break down fast. They fuel the microorganisms. But a pile made of nothing but grass will pack together, cut off airflow, and turn anaerobic, which means it starts rotting instead of composting. You need carbon-rich material alongside it: dry leaves, small woody twigs, torn-up cardboard. These materials don't just balance the chemistry, they create physical structure, small pockets of air inside the pile that keep things breathing. An easy ratio to remember: 1 part fresh grass to 2 parts dry material. When the balance is right, the pile heats up from the inside, sometimes reaching 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. That temperature is enough to kill off weed seeds and most pathogens in the material. After 3 to 6 months, when the mixture has turned a deep, uniform brown and smells like forest floor rather than rotting grass, the compost is ready to use. And finally, the method most people overlook because it seems almost too simple. After mowing, just leave the clippings where they fall. No bagging, no processing. The clippings decompose right there on the lawn, returning nitrogen to the same grass that produced them, while also stimulating the root system to grow stronger after each cut. Maintained consistently, this approach can supply roughly a quarter of a lawn's annual fertilizer needs on its own. It also extends the effectiveness of whatever fertilizer was last applied by an additional 2 to 4 weeks. The only condition is that you avoid cutting too much at once. Removing no more than 1/3 of the grass height per session is the standard rule. Too thick a layer of clippings and you block light from reaching the soil. But kept at the right amount, the clippings practically vanish within days, quietly returning to the earth exactly where they belong. Now, there are 2 mistakes that can turn everything above into a disaster for your garden. One of them is effectively irreversible once it happens. Most people only find out about them after their plants start behaving strangely, and there's no obvious explanation for why. The first mistake is invisible. The grass looks green, looks fresh, nothing seems off. But if it came from an area that was treated with herbicide, the problem started long before you brought it home. Certain active compounds, aminopyrrolide and clopyrrolide in particular, are remarkably persistent. They can survive the composting process, pass through the digestive system of livestock, and remain active in soil for months, sometimes years. When you apply clippings from a treated area to your vegetable beds, you're not just adding organic matter, you're introducing chemical residue directly into the root zone. The frustrating part is that symptoms don't appear right away. Weeks later, the plants start to show what they've been dealing with: leaves curling downward in unusual ways, twisted stems, new growth that emerges stunted and deformed and never fully develops. By that point, there's almost nothing to do but wait. Wait for the soil to recover across multiple growing seasons, during which your garden produces very little of value. The safest rule, with almost no exceptions: Only use clippings from areas where you know and can verify the complete history of chemical use. The second mistake is less severe but happens far more often. Using grass that has already gone to seed as mulch looks harmless from the outside, but a single handful of seed-heavy clippings can carry hundreds, even thousands of viable seeds, still alive, still ready to germinate. And you're placing them into the single most ideal environment possible: moist, nutrient-rich, well-maintained soil. In other words, you're planting weeds directly into your most carefully tended beds. The fix is straightforward: cut grass while it's still young, before seed heads have had a chance to form. That's also when nutritional content is at its peak, so you're winning on both ends. If the grass has already seeded, don't throw it out, but don't use it directly either. Put it in the compost pile. A properly active pile running at 50 to 60 degrees Celsius will destroy the seeds long before the finished compost is ever applied to your garden. Every 1,000 square feet of lawn produces between 130 and 180 pounds of clippings each year. People spend energy stripping nutrients out of their soil by bagging and hauling away those clippings, then turn around and spend money buying fertilizer to replace exactly what they just removed. The most expensive cycle in gardening is also the easiest one to break because it only requires changing one decision. Instead of bagging the grass, keep it and put it to work. While your neighbors are still loading clippings into trash bags and dragging them to the curb, your garden is quietly accumulating what they just threw away. That's an advantage that costs you absolutely nothing, simply because you now know this. Which of these 4 methods are you going to try first? Or do you already have your own approach to making use of grass clippings? Drop it in the comments below. A lot of people in this community are looking for exactly what you've already figured out.